is enough being done in rural areas to educate about the LGBT plus community?
No.
Okay, who's from the rurals? So that we speak from experience. Okay.
Which
Tell us where
rural?
you're from.
Which rural?
Yes.
Okay, so I predominantly spent most of my life in Mpumalanga, right, on my grandmother's farm. And it's not really, well, my experience, right, it wasn't like any different from something happening in the city. So everybody is aware of who we are in our community and stuff like that, but everybody is just shining away from it. It's still like, ooh, plus it's worse. It's like taboo in the villages, guys. Like, you don't even talk about a guy being interested in another guy or possibly pursuing something with another guy. It's just something that's not spoken of. So it's sad, but it's what's happening in my experience.
You know, for me with Kwakwa, my grand's from Kwakwa, and I used to go there for the school holidays to visit. And my only experience of queer culture was that I've heard rumors of traditional healers sleeping with men,
Yes.
but never ever where there's two guys who are like. The first time I found out about gay people was in the Bible. And having a Bible study.
Which Bible you read?
Wait, no, what Bible?
In 1 Corinthians
And also Leviticus
13 verse 12, it says that
Which
men who love
term?
other men will not
And
inherit
Romans
God's
as well.
kingdom.
Yeah.
And I've asked my grandma,
Oh,
like,
them
what does that
condemning
mean?
gays.
Yes. So I speak to a lot of transgender women, right? And they have a very different experience in the rural areas because a lot of them say that there's a huge level of acceptance in the rural areas, and gay men have a different experience to that. But trans women in particular, there isn't a lot of transphobia back home in Makayeni. It's a very weird thing. They're very accepted. It's almost like
Can we be specific to tribe? Are we talking like which rural? Because I don't think
Oh,
it's the same, of course.
okay.
But
So
also,
might be
I
something
agree
that's linked
there.
to
Yeah.
versus culture.
Well, I'm referencing two trans women that I can think of now, and one of them is from KZN. I'm not sure where, but
Okay,
like
cool.
KZN, and another one is a very Sotho-speaking person. So I'm thinking your Val sort of areas,
Yeah,
perhaps, because
Okay.
Botswana, that sort of thing. But they a lot of trans women speak of how back home they didn't think there was anything wrong with them. Yes, they knew they were different to other boys, but they were sort of experienced. They were embraced rather, and it's only when they came to Johannesburg or the big cities where there was something. I mean, they knew they were different.
I think
you
with
know?
regards to that, it's like the manner in competition. Like, is there somebody I can compete with? Because it's a very small town.
Yeah.
I can imagine the amount of competition that runs with trans women. Like, a straight man wouldn't really go to a trans woman in
Yes,
order to
exactly.
kind of be with. That's why it's not
So
competition.
the goals are
But if it
unfair.
was a very competitive place like Johannesburg, everybody's trying to trash on somebody.
But Khumo,
So
what
you
is-
have to
but
small
what is the
town.
education?
It becomes a
I'm-
bit more tougher.
I think we need to go 2 steps back because I'm struggling to figure out what is being done to educate. What does that mean?
Yes.
What am I educating you on? Because it's very different if you say, are we doing enough to educate people on, the road signs?
Yeah.
They're there. We're not just getting information there. What is this that needs to be educated? Because I don't get a LGBTI education.
No,
True.
I
I
sort of had exposure to it because I live in the city, but I don't have an education.
But I think
Yeah.
So
that's
what
what it
is it?
speaks to.
So
Speaks
maybe-
to
so-
visibility.
so-
Visibility creates the conversation.
So-
So the question is rooted in: is there enough visibility of queer individuals in the rurals, which will then lead to there being a conversation about it,
And
and that's how the
But
education takes place.
I think
I mean, depending on whether or not you are interested in educating, it's not to say that.
I think we're not there. I think when I said educate, when you say visibility, for me visibility is being able to see things happen, right? How many blue cars can you see? Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4 blue cars. But when I think about education, is understanding that Leroy as a gay man is not a trans woman.
Yes.
So don't clump us together.
Yes.
So, because again, whether you can have a trans woman and a gay man there, for them, whoever
It's
it
the
is
same
goes,
thing.
but it's not us, so it's the same. They all come together.
I think
And I think
Yeah.
what is the education that would have to happen? What is the education? Because I don't think there is any education.
There is
I was about to
There
say,
is,
I
There
think
isn't,
But
because
government
the,
is
the
really
visibility
difficult.
is
yeah,
not
it's
there.
the only source of
But
like
there's nothing to
education.
talk about. You can't talk about something
If
that
you
we're
can't
not
see
seeing
it,
and it's
yeah.
not there. We
And
can't. It's
yeah.
a very removed reality for
So
them.
I agree.
Whereas, for example, in my community, I'm from Lesotho, so you can understand the most remote of all villages you can
Yeah.
think of, and something like that, it's not even in the vocab, it's not even in their language because
People
it's
don't know
not
what it
there.
is.
It's not
But
there. There's
no-
no one to see
Yeah.
it until they, recently when they do projects where they bring in people from other parts of the continent to come teach in rural areas, and there was one like a gay man and he's a teacher. But even then, it's looked at as something that comes from far. It's not something
from
that,
here.
yes, it's not from here. So we're fine with it because it doesn't affect our immediate community. This person can just go back to being the way they were somewhere else and be someone
But
else's
you know, in
problem.
situ
But for
culture,
somebody-
trans
somebody
culture is
here-
something that's always existed. For me, because
I mean, all queer culture.
in Kwakwa, I've seen that trans women are more accepted, and they treat it as an, if you are a gay man and you're still living as a gay straight man,
Yes.
you are liking things.
But that's
then when
because
you
of
are
the
trans,
expectation of
they
what
say that
manhood
then
should look
that's
like.
who you naturally
A lot of transgender women who I've spoken to who predominantly come from the rural areas and have come to your urban cities for greater opportunities, a lot of them strongly believe that transphobia is a foreign export.
I think it's also being okay. It's okay with distorting womanism, like being a woman.
Yes.
Because again, it's we've lived in a world where we've never really commoditized being a woman. Like we've never made it good and
Yes.
viable, and you
So
need
there
to
was no
stick to
value
a
because
woman.
of
Yeah.
patriarchy.
Yeah.
And now, whereas on the other end, if you're a gay man who presents themselves unlike a transgender woman, you start going, but you see, you're messing around with this thing that we hold very sacred.
And that's
brand,
where
this brand of
you're messing.
manhood.
And that's where
Yeah.
patriarchy
Messing
comes
with
from.
the brand.
Because patriarchy obviously dominates
But
the
also
whole
with regards
structure.
to, is there enough being done to educate people in the rural
I don't
areas?
think there
No.
is.
I don't think
But
there's
that's
enough
why
being done
government
to
is
educate
looking
people.
to implement
Generally.
it.
Generally,
There's a lot to be
period.
done.
But that's
It's
why-
not just
that's
a
why-
rural thing, and it goes back to what you were saying as well,
Yes.
because also education does sort of to a certain extent come down to representation.
Yeah.
Because even when you are teaching a story like in literature, English literature, and it's about Romeo and Juliet or some other cis heterosexual couple,
Yeah.
even if you're not teaching
Them about
heterosexuality,
Yeah.
the fact that there is a representation of that
Yeah.
Then you
in that
already learn
book.
about its
So
existence
for
and
more
its
than
impact.
anything, I think we should educate, but I also do think representation is very important, because a representation, more than teaching people, because also when you teach people, it almost has a bad connotation. It says we are something weird and bizarre that needs to be taught
Yeah.
and understood. So to teach people isn't necessarily personally what I think I want. I don't want
Right.
people to learn me,
So-
but I just want people to know that there are people
But
But
like
that's
but-
why
but then
government is
how-
looking. But that's why government is looking to implement it from grade 4 upwards.
But what are they
With
implementing?
regards to LO, they want
So-
to
so
teach
what happens in
LGBTQIA plus
But-
community
so-
to the kids from.
So I'm going to
grade
push it a
4
bit further and
upwards.
say, but what are they teaching about
Why-
LGBTI?
why
Let me
that's the
explain the
question,
question.
because it
Let me
hasn't been
explain the
implemented
question.
yet, so I
Let me explain the
can't
question, right?
Point of reference.
And I appreciate that. What I'm trying to get to is, it is so weird because you're saying that the literature needs to represent the people. We have Romeo and
Yes.
Juliet, we understand, right?
Yes.
Hetero couple, that's how they love each other, etc.,
Yes.
etc. I am represented because I am hetero, so I understand it,
Yes,
right?
and you
But
relate to it.
but do you see how much we need to infiltrate in the syllabus for us to even have a conversation? It has to be seen as normalized. So I don't like things
Yes.
like LO, for instance, because LO says, here's 40-minute period, you sit here, we teach you about things that you don't understand and don't know, and then you can go, oh, I know a gay, I know a transgender, I know, but you never actually
Interact with
interact with the
Yeah.
subject matter. Whereas when it comes in a story where it says, Khumo and Dumi were sitting in a tree and they loved each other and so they kissed.
And you know what it looks like.
That's
goes,
what Cartoon Network did with that episode where they had the two boys kissing and it went viral.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 years ago. And they basically just trying to show like the younger generation as to how two gay boys can love
But
each
that's
other
also
without
not
a problem.
the only conversation that's important. I think with a lot of content, there's an age gap. We
Yeah.
are teaching the kids, but there are other people who still exist in our community. There's older people, like the elderly, like
For
there's
me-
people in mind, like you know what I mean. I think
Yeah.
content shouldn't be specific to a certain age group because we're like, oh, it's the future. But in the present, there are people who also affect their knowledge around things does affect our progress in society.
I
Also,
think the
my
best
thing
way
is-
to get the point across about queer people, especially in small communities, is introducing queer history as a
But
subject.
we don't have a point of reference,
But-
and that's my biggest
but-
problem.
but we
have a
Our
point of
web
reference
DTs
because-
are a point of reference, but for kids, there is
No,
isn't
but
a
the thing about
specific
the
solid
thing about
point
queer
of
history,
reference.
the thing about queer history is that you get to teach kids the struggles that the queer community had to overcome. The same way, take apartheid for example. In order for us to understand and sympathize with apartheid, we had to be taught the history of black people in South Africa and how it happened. And then for us to, or even for some white people, that to sort of like start humanizing black people, they'll base it on apartheid. They'll be like, oh, that's what happened to black people, poor them type of thing.
Yeah, but
But
they're
it
still
still doesn't
racist.
normalize. Yeah, it still doesn't normalize.
It's
So the
important also
homophobia
pay
doesn't
history to
disappear.
kind of thing though. You cannot just teach about what do queer people do in bed, but also our history of to where we come
I don't
from.
think.
But
I
my
think
point
that
is
is
different.
That's wishy-washy for me.
Have you
because
watched Simon and I?
That's wishy-washy for me because what it does is that it gives you this fat load of info that you can't actually land anyway, right? And again, when you talk about representation and want to talk about how you want to break down all these things that we need to infiltrate, I think at the very core of it all is that we do not have enough discussions in the house, in the relationships we have, because every single time when you have a conversation, this should be in there, because when you talk about humans, all humans should be represented.
Yeah.
It's almost like normal. It's like seeing a transgender woman as a newsreader should be as normal as someone saying, please pass me the salt. It's not a headline. And that's what representation does.
So my point is, when you having those conversations and having so fragmented in all those little circles, they never talk to each other, because it's always behind closed doors. It's always okay, but is he gay? What is gay? We don't know what to do. But there's a book that says there's a gay thing, so that's what they're doing in bed. You do need the literature because you need to understand, because they don't have it, that kind of information. But at the same point, I feel like we're just not having the conversations because it's always isolated. It's like it's this one only thing, gayness, and it doesn't affect anything else. So we can also easily shine you into a corner.
Cool. I was gonna say that I don't quite agree with what Thabo is saying about there being maybe a curriculum that focuses on gay history, because again, it also exceptionalizes one thing over another and says that, oh, there's history and then there's gay history.
That's something
Whereas,
part of history curriculum in school.
You're letting me finish. So then when you do that and you create the difference that, oh, in this subject we'll talk about history, but then we'll have a different subject where we'll talk about gay history. Yes, what it does is that it also doesn't make it seem as one. And also gay history and straight history happened together at the same time. That's why when you introduce not really gay history in curriculums, but stories about people who were gay, even in conversation where it has nothing to do about being gay, like the struggle, for instance, when we talk about apartheid and whatever, we're only talking about men and cis men, cis heterosexual men in particular, as if we're saying when people were being shot, gay and lesbian people were sleeping at home and not participating.
Waiting for their
that's
time
what
to
I
come.
mean.
Yes.
But let me
And
say,
that's the point. That's
And
the
then-
point I was trying to make. Sorry to interject.
It's okay.
That's the point I was trying to make with regards to Simon and I by Bev Ditty, who's one of South Africa's prolific LGBTQIA directors,
Yeah.
right? So she created a documentary with regards to how they fought for the struggle. They started their first Glow, which is a gay and lesbian organization, right? And it's just like, it shows you that there were people already working towards it, and there wasn't a medium or platform for them to kind of execute it the way that other mediums are able to create it.
Gay history. Okay, there are people, and who they sleep with is only an aspect of their identity. So me being queer, it might be because of structures that are put in place that it plays a huge role in the position I take in society, but it doesn't make me any different from a normal person. So when we teach history, we don't teach alien history, and we don't, you know what I mean? So we don't exceptionalize things that should be coexisting. So when you say we should teach people gay history, then we are separating gay people from normal people.
Africa, I read about a Ghanaian prince who was queer, and he was well respected, and he still kept male concubines, and even though he was able to, he reproduced and had children, but he was known that he's a queer person. And I think it's very important for us to teach queer history from the beginning, as all the information that we have about anything that is remotely queer, we need to encapsulate that.
With regards to mediums such as traditional media, creating platforms for transgender women, for gay people, it's not really getting across because our parents or people that are older don't necessarily have the mindset that we have as liberated neoliberals as we do. So it kind of confuses the whole narrative of trying to create history, education put together. Hence we're saying it's up to us, I personally feel, as people who have platforms, as people who are influential, as people who go to the township as well, in terms of us as a production company. It's up to us to kind of create the narrative behind the scenes in order for the medium to kind of reach and touch and live. Because Generations actually has 10 million viewers.
can I pick up on a point that was made earlier? My thing is that with education, when you do creating a curriculum, you divide it. For example, when you did history at school, you covered African history, American history, the AU. So everything has to be intersectional. You creating a curriculum which is based on queer history does not separate or say that queer people are not normal, but that's how education is. It's intersectional, and you know that in this block we're going to be covering this aspect of history.
It's. I just wanted to get back to that. I think what Thabo was trying to say was that we need to incorporate gay history into history, not necessarily separate the subjects themselves, but students need to learn as much about Simon and Nkoli as they did about Steve Biko and Chris Hanya. And whether or not we separate it, I don't think it's doing us a disservice as the LGBTI community. The most important thing is that people learn, students learn, and that it's prioritized also, but also in terms of educating people. The next question becomes, whose responsibility is it to then educate? Because the question was, is enough being time? So another sort of follow-up question is, whose responsibility is it to teach people about, to teach students or people in rural areas about LGBTI issues, history, current, that sort of thing? Because a lot of, Mandela didn't have to go and teach people about Mandela. He was revered and loved, and his deeds were recorded by those who revered and loved him. So should the same thing happen with regards to LGBTI, perhaps history, for example, or is it our responsibility, and are we then not also sort of carrying too much or putting too much sort of pressure life?
It's so loaded because you find yourself in a situation where you're dealing with having to teach, like when you say in the schools, for instance, like curriculum, it deals with schools, right? So we can say 18 below, you have to deal with them. But remember, most of the oppression is learned. So these kids, you teach them in a classroom and then they walk out and they go back home and Gogo calls them whatever and Auntie calls them whatever. And so what do you do to then have a conversation? I don't think it actually can be sectionalized into rural areas and non-rural areas as far as access is concerned, right? Yes. Because you've got cell phones in the rural areas. You've got television sets in the rural areas for the national broadcast at the very least. So what do we do to have those conversations? Because in this very city that we're in, when we had the kiss on a particular soapy about with two gay guys kissing, it was a big thing, and that's where you saw it. The same thing with racism. It doesn't sort of creep up when a gay man walks by. It's in the little nuances that happen in the background, in the fact that whenever we see on stock images on television for a family on a detergent ad, the first thing we see is mom, dad, 2.5 kids, a dog, and a soiled shirt. You never ever see anything other. You never see two guys who might still be heterosexual living in the same environment. It gives you such. So you look at yourself and say, I'm not represented in any way. And again, it goes back to the representation being a little different from having Itumeleng walk into the room and say, hi, I am this person. But to say to here, look, here's a family that doesn't look like yours. Here's another one that doesn't look like yours.
I think
but then
normativity is a big
the responsibility
thing.
then, because again, it comes from a conversation of gatekeeping as well.
Yeah.
Who are the people who are in ad agencies? Who are the people who are in education and in every sector where people are responsible for producing content? So because it's not like this seeking out to hire gay people and say, hey, come and teach us about how to incorporate your history or represent you guys in whatever it is that we're doing. So if gay people aren't being hired in certain jobs or they're not allowed into certain spaces, then who are we creating the conversation for and whose responsibility is it?
And so we need to make ourselves so indispensable that you can't help but attribute a community to better things. I think for too long we've been put together into, for instance, gay men, promiscuous, untrustworthy, disease-ridden, and we need to be more valuable than that. We need to say, well, here are examples, real examples of people who aren't in that. It's not fair, but I think it's necessary.
My thing is, I feel like we just need to break into these spaces, you guys. Because, obviously no one's advertising families that we're used to. Everyone is doing things that sell for television type thing. And as I said, thank God for the show, because we finally have people watch and actually understand what it's like for us to have to sit at home and read something that has nothing to do with you, that you can't even relate to. You're paying for your DSTV, but there's no program for you on TV, do you understand? So I feel like we have to infiltrate the space, come up with scenes, come up with shows, stories, novels. The only way we're going to educate and inform the older generations about who we are and exactly who we've been and what we've been fighting for and what our people have been through, and we were still going as I don't want to isolate us and say as a community, as a because we're all we're one, we're human, right? I don't like the term community, but so in terms of educating and informing people, it literally starts with nursery rhymes from creche and all these cartoon movies on it. Do you understand? So our future grows with this understanding and perception of, so there's a queer person and there's a normal cishet person, do you understand? And they know what the differences of the two. Somebody else, like grandma at home or whatever, can read a book, they can read a novel about my struggle coming out as a so and so and so, and living as a 50-year-old man who still identifies as gay or whatever, very proudly and loudly. Do you understand? That's the only way we can sort of interact with the two, or sort of get both to understand and know who we are. So in a way, it is part of everyone's responsibility, and I hate saying that it's our responsibility to have to inform and educate people on who we are.
But we don't have a
choice.
choice.
It's very sad. Yeah, it's very sad, but it's kind of like what it's come to.
I think media plays an important role in how people perceive things and the opinions that they form around a certain issue. So it is important that we see representation of queer people on televisions, in print media, and so forth, so as to bridge the education gap between adults and children.
So, you know, with people like us who, I think it's very important when we're in spaces such as corporate, you know, such as advertising agencies, we have that platform to kind of change the narrative.
So my point is we always are simulating, like what we do with black people, with white people, we're constantly doing it. And the fact that we're saying that black people don't have to go out there and make themselves feel, you know, their presence and teach white people, we had to all the time. We had to constantly, our otherness made us fight even harder. So it actually is upon us. I mean, if Mandela didn't do what he did,
no, it's a choice for him, but it doesn't disregard everyone else's experience.
That we have to constantly, I mean, I do it every single day in spaces where I have to go there and say, listen, I'm smart, so my orientation means nothing, and I have to show you
I
constantly.
think it's more in corporate spaces.
That you need to constantly be pushing it down. So I don't think that it is not implicit on us, because when you say that, then who's going to fight for you? Must I fight for you? It's not my battle.
Yes, but it might not be your battle maybe as a straight person, it might not be your battle as a cis person, but allies are very important. You can't do this, you can't do it. Firstly, it's just nothing is being done, or not enough is being done everywhere, across the board, villages, hoods, suburbs, anywhere, right? Because one, it's either it's spaces where gay people aren't allowed in, so there is no that presence, and therefore the conversation becomes unimportant. So that's why we need to invite in a lot of allyship. Not to say that, well, we need heterosexual people to come and save us, but allies are very important, and we need to know that it's not just our responsibility to do it, because it's a human rights thing. Because there are certain spaces that as marginalized people we are not allowed into. So when we are able to, in whatever spaces that we can, get access to people who hold positions of power and can influence decisions, regardless of their sexuality, they are able to represent us in the way that provides a general understanding and representation of issues that we face as the queer community. It's everyone's business.
Definitely. True. That's where I take it from. My queer rights are human rights.
Yes.
And my presence in the world is as important as any heterosexual person's. And heterosexual people are not more entitled to this world more than I am.
Yes.
And my thing is that nothing is being done in the rurals to educate people about queer people. At the same time, heterosexual people are not taking it upon themselves as a responsibility to observe all human rights.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, especially people who are previously marginalized, they are very aware about their own human rights, but they don't realize when they're oppressing others. Yeah. And one thing I always say is that for me, as a black queer South African male, my fellow black South Africans are to me what Israel is to Palestine. And those who are formerly oppressed cannot be oppressors. And the education needs to start with the individuals. The information is there, it's available. And then moving it from there and making it a structural thing where government policy is there to say, you know what, we will no longer stand aside and watch as the queer community is marginalized, because they are as entitled to this country as everyone else.
That's true. I agree with all of you. I also disagree with all of you.
Cheers, Marc.
I like what you said about gay people don't have to explain themselves, you know, because whenever somebody wants to know something about something, they go on Google, they go on YouTube, you learn how to cook a meal or whatever it is. If you are invested in something enough, you take it upon yourself to go and do that. So it then poses the question, why don't straight people, if they are really that interested in equality and fairness and learning about us, why don't they just like pick up a book or go on Wikipedia or whatever? Well, not that, but something more reliable, you know, or even ask a person. You don't necessarily have to start the conversation yourself, but if they do have a person within the LGBTQ community, ask that person and do their own sort of research. I get that, you know, because not everybody wants to be an activist. Some people just want to go and buy bread. In the same breath, I do agree with Itu as well to say, if we don't do it, who will?
Exactly.
You know, if we all walked around saying, it's not my job, I'm just a citizen of this country, I deserve, I'm entitled to the same rights as my cis brothers and sisters. If we know you deserve them, but they're not a lived experience.
True.
They're not easily afforded to you as they are to your. As much as we want to say that the Constitution is brilliant and liberal, and it really is, we have one of the best in the world. But it's not a lived, felt experience for many people, more especially the LGBTI community. So I do think it is also important to take it upon ourselves to be the ones who teach and correct, because also there are people who teach, but or people just learn from different avenues, and some of those are very mistaken. You know, so aside from teaching, there's a lot of unteaching that we have to do, and society at large has a lot of unlearning to do as well, because they are also walking around carrying some opinions and perspectives about us which are not necessarily true, or maybe true to certain contexts and scenarios, but not to all of us. You know, it's not a blanket sort of situation.
And on that point, you're saying that as informed people, we also need to kind of use our access and the proximity that we have with regards to being in media, with regards to being in any space. We also need to use that and channel. The way that the Chicken Licken ad came across, and they had those soul sisters just coming out. Like, hey, what's up? You know, it's like it's really a team that came forward, and they're like, actually, guys, there isn't representation here. Let's put it forward. It's up to us as people who have the access to get to these people, to kind of inform and relearn and unlearn and relearn and unlearn
Also,
and inform.
I'm just like, celebrate queerness, guys. The more we celebrate ourselves, the more, I know it's sad, but the more we celebrate ourselves, the more comfortable people are with us, the more they're willing to adjust their knowledge and like whatever information they have of us.
That's true.
Yeah, if you celebrate yourself more, you just enjoy spending time with queer like families, you know. We go to all these spaces, we infiltrate, we cause a scene, like let people know we're here and we're
going nowhere.
We're alive, we've got nowhere to go, and it's a matter of people actually understanding that and having to sort of come to terms with the fact that we.
I think there's also a balance where our power lies, and I think in so many spaces, we have been, whether you're black, you're female, all the other vulnerable groups. We've had to use all the tools we had in our arsenal, right? And like you're talking about, government at some point, and you need to start using the resources that you have there. You have a contract with your government. For them to look after you, you pay your taxes. So if we keep the economy, take our money out of it, don't want to work with you if you're not going to work with me in that way. I mean, it sounds radical, but you literally withhold the resources that you have until they listen. Because remember, the reason why we're here at the beginning is we never actually were valuable. We weren't seen as valuable. You're not, smart enough. You don't look good enough. You're not male enough. You're not female enough. You weren't enough. And when you start hitting back, it becomes problematic. So I think to infiltrate those spaces, get in there and get in there loud. And yes, it's hard to be an activist all the time. Sometimes all I do want to do is go buy some bread. But you need to remember the back of your mind. And sometimes take the time out to say, okay, I'll go through the whole spiel with you. Let me explain to you what orientation is, which is different from gender, from sexuality, from identification. And then have those conversations. And maybe in the rural areas, then we'll start infiltrating. I think for us, the major problem is that there is no education. We need to start it here in the cities where we've got the resources, so that when it does get out, there's a bit of a structure to it. We know what we're going out with. We have some, armor on us that we can go fight with. Because right now, we're going in here blind, and I think it'll be putting the horse in front of the cart in front of the horse if we want to go into Kwakwa and be like, okay,
I'm gay.
Conversations is what do you want?
I'm here.
I think let's just start where we work and say, okay, you need to recognize the fact that paternity leave for a male same-sex couple doesn't make sense to have 20 days between the two of us. Doesn't make sense. Let's deal with that firstly, and then start moving in those circles, and eventually it will get to a point where they cannot function like apartheid without us.
And there's something a tool which many people dismiss, which I feel if we could tap into this, it's not theoretical, but I think the biggest battle and problem that the queer community is facing is religious groups. Religious groups hold the most influence over people and power in communities. And but the fact that by law now, there's a law I think that is coming into place which hate speech is illegal.
Isn't it the Brazil decriminalization?
What I mean in South Africa.
Oh, in South Africa?
Yeah, I know about hate speech is illegal. And where now, I believe, religious institutions need to be held accountable about the spreading of hate speech.
Because
and that way, in the small communities, more people will not now be institutionalized. Look, our oppression is institutionalized. People do not just measure on us. Yeah, it's systematic and it's institutionalized. And I believe religious groups are the biggest tool towards this towards
Yeah.
the promotion of homophobia.
Very true.
And also the biggest instrument to educate, which is what we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
They, as much as they are in a position of power, which they have used to sort of make our lives a living hell, they're also in the same position
Of
to
power.
correct
For
that,
change, yeah.
Yeah.
to change all of that.
So celebrating queerness for me is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, you know? You come to a space as you are and nothing can faze you. Nobody can change anything about you. You feel very much comfortable in what you're in and how you choose to express yourself. And I mean, you celebrate your one self and somebody else is very closeted and might be too scared or like too worried about what people might think about them. Them seeing you celebrate yourself and put so much power in who you are and what you're about also liberates them and gives them a sense of like relief and a sense of relativity, like I can relate to this type of person, therefore they can celebrate themselves, I celebrate myself, we all celebrate ourselves. Queerness, queer celebration, yeah.